He was the man who faced Hannibal when Rome itself trembled on the edge of destruction. Yet victory can be the beginning of betrayal. Hero, savior, outcast. For Rome admired its heroes, but it never allowed any one man to stand too tall for too long. Scipio, however, did not behave as his enemies expected. Many senators, led by the elder statesman Cato the Elder, began to argue that Carthage should not merely be humbled, but annihilated completely. To them, the memory of Hannibal's march through Italy, of Cannae, of Rome's near destruction, was too raw to forgive. They saw Carthage as a constant, festering threat, one that would rise again if not extinguished. But Scipio opposed this vision. Having fought Carthage face to face, he believed Rome's victory at Zama had been decisive enough. Carthage, stripped of its fleet, its empire, and much of its wealth, was no longer a true rival. To obliterate it completely, he argued, would not only be unnecessary, but dishonorable. Rome should be magnanimous in victory, not vindictive. This stance, noble as it might seem, placed Scipio on a collision course with many of his peers. To them, his resistance to destroying Carthage looked less like statesmanship and more like arrogance, even betrayal. Whispers began to spread through the Senate. Perhaps Scipio had grown too close to Rome's enemy, too sympathetic to the Carthaginian plight. At the same time, his very fame became a liability. Ordinary Romans revered him, and that adoration bred jealousy among other aristocrats who feared his influence. He was invited to banquets. His likeness was painted, his victories retold endlessly, all of which made him appear larger than the Republic itself. And in Rome, nothing was more dangerous than seeming indispensable. The turning point came when political rivals began to openly challenge his authority. Scipio's brother, Lucius Scipio, was accused of corruption while campaigning in the East, and by association, suspicions fell upon Scipio himself. The once celebrated general now found himself the subject of accusations, summoned to answer charges before the very Senate that had once crowned him Rome's savior. Standing in the forum, he did not defend himself with evidence or legal argument. Instead, he reminded the Roman people of who he was. With commanding presence, he gestured toward the Capitol and declared, "On this very day, 1 year ago, I defeated Hannibal at Zama. Is this how Rome rewards her savior?" The crowd erupted, shaming his accusers into silence. For the moment, Scipio had turned aside the storm. But the seed had been planted. His enemies had seen that he could be shaken, that even he could be dragged into the mud of politics. And for a man who had once commanded legions, navigating the treacherous waters of senatorial intrigue proved far more dangerous. The hero of Zama was becoming a man under suspicion. Once the Republic's shield, he was now viewed by many as a potential tyrant in the making, a figure whose very brilliance made him a threat to the fragile balance of Roman politics. Rome, which had owed him everything, was beginning to prepare for his fall. Do you think Scipio was right to spare Carthage? Or should he have listened to Cato's cry of, "Carthage must be destroyed"? Was Scipio's downfall inevitable because of Rome's politics? Or did his own pride and decisions make him vulnerable? By 187 BC, the shadow that had slowly crept over Scipio's legacy finally darkened into open attack. Once celebrated as Rome's savior, he now stood accused of corruption. His enemies in the Senate, led by political rivals eager to topple him, charged him with misusing funds and accepting bribes during his campaigns in the East. The scene was unthinkable. The man who had humbled Hannibal, who had saved Rome from destruction, summoned like a common criminal to defend himself before the same body that had once showered him with honors. When he entered the forum, he did not come as a broken man. He came with the dignity of one who knew his worth. Raising his voice, Scipio reminded the crowd of his deeds. On this very day I conquered Hannibal and delivered peace to Rome. If you doubt me now, then follow me to the capital, and let us give thanks to Jupiter for that victory. His words silenced the court, and for a moment his accusers faltered. But Scipio saw the writing on the wall. The Republic no longer wanted him. The Senate, bound by fear of any man too powerful, would never again trust him. Rather than endure further humiliation, he made a choice that stunned Rome. He withdrew from public life. No more speeches, no more campaigns, no more attempts to steer the fate of the Republic he had once saved. He retreated to his villa at Liternum, far from the bustle of the capital. There, the once great general lived in quiet seclusion, watching from afar as Rome continued on its restless path. The city that owed him its survival seemed eager to forget him, eager to move past the man who had once loomed so large in its story. In 183 BC, the same year Hannibal Barca took poison in exile to escape Roman capture, Scipio Africanus drew his last breath. There was no grand funeral, no triumphal procession, no thunderous applause of the people he had saved. Instead, he was laid to rest in a modest tomb, with an epitaph said to read bitterly, "Ungrateful fatherland, you will not even have my bones." It was the final act of betrayal. The Republic had used him when it needed him most, celebrated him in victory, and cast him aside once he became inconvenient. The man who had risen from tragedy, who had outwitted Hannibal and secured Rome's supremacy, died not as a hero in marble, but as a man abandoned. His legacy left to the judgment of history. And yet, history remembers. The silence of his tomb cannot drown out the echo of Zama, nor the truth that without him, Rome might never have survived to become an empire. So we are left to wonder, was Scipio Africanus betrayed by his city, or was this the price that every Roman hero was destined to pay? Did Rome truly deserve the heroes who saved it? If you were Scipio, would you have fought the accusations to the end, or withdrawn in dignity as he did? The life of Scipio Africanus is not just the tale of a soldier. It is the story of how victory and betrayal can walk side by side in the corridors of history. He rose from the shadow of a fallen father to face the greatest general of the ancient world. He ended the terror of Hannibal, secured Rome's supremacy, and yet in the end was left to die far from the city he had saved. History remembers the battles, the triumphs, and the strategies, but it also whispers of the politics, the envy, and the human frailty that can undo even the greatest legacies. Scipio's life asks us a question that echoes through the ages. Is glory worth the cost if it comes with betrayal? If this journey through Scipio's life has moved you, challenged your perspective, or made you see history in a new light, I invite you to keep that conversation alive. Because history isn't just dates and names, it's the human story we're still writing. Which moment in Scipio's life do you think defined him more? The victory at Zama or his decision to walk away from Rome? If you could ask Scipio one question about his life, what would it be? Like this video so more people can discover the story. Share it with someone who loves the lessons and dramas of the ancient world. And subscribe so you never miss the next chapter of the past, brought vividly to life.